So what goes on at a homebrew competition? Is it just some folks sitting around sipping beer and deciding which one tastes best? Who decides the winner? And who's running this show anyway? Stick around and we'll even answer the age-old mystery of what the hell is the mini best of show. I spent a lot of hours with the BJCP Judge Procedures Manual, the BJCP website, and talking to judges from around the world on the BJCP Facebook page to get the answers to these and many other questions. So, let's get judgy about homebrew competitions. In order to know more about the homebrew comps, we need to know who all is involved in the event. Let's meet the staff. First off, there's the competition organizer. This person has the overall responsibility for the comp, prepping the event by registering it with the BJCP and/or the AHA if it's going to be a sanctioned competition, doing any advertising or promotion, getting and/or designing the medals, ribbons, and prizes. By the way, did you know there's a competition in the US that gives out a freaking sword for Best of Show winner? How sweet is that? Sorry, I got distracted. Let's continue. They're also in charge of arranging sponsors for prizes, and they also gather all the materials needed for the judging day. Score sheets, pencils, cups, pitchers, stuff like that. Next is the judge director. This is the person in charge of all the judging operations. They recruit judges, assign categories to the judges at each table, and handle any judging issues that may arise during the comp. They ensure there is at least one BJCP ranked judge per flight and that at least one of these people is experienced enough to be the head judge. We'll get to that position in just a minute. The judge director can be the competition organizer, and they can also judge in the competition as long as they have no knowledge of the entrants versus the entries. On judging day, the judge director has a lot to do along with judging, if they choose to do that, that is. They're also responsible for setting up the judging sessions and trying to keep them to about 2.5 hours each. This should be about 12 entries per flight at roughly 10 minutes per entry. Along those lines, the flights need to be kept to a maximum of 12 entries to avoid palate fatigue. Next, they arrange the flight list of the entries in order that goes from lightest, most delicately flavored, and lowest ABV sample to the more aggressively flavored, fuller-bodied big beers. I mean, let's face it, do you think you'd give an English mild a good impression after 3 barley wines? Yeah, me either. They also assign the most qualified, highest experienced judge as head judge. I know, we're almost there, so just hang on a little bit longer. Lastly, the judge director is in charge of holding the judge instruction meeting prior to the judging session to cover rules and procedures for the comp. Alright, now we can talk about the head judge. Each table should have a head judge to oversee the judging session. They review all scores and paperwork for accuracy before they're handed into the organizer for final analysis. They also review the style or styles at their table with the BJCP style guidelines for each category being judged and go over the scoring guidelines with the other judges at the table. Being head judge also has the responsibility of heading up the discussions of each entry and helping come to a consensus on scores, as well as tutoring novice and lower ranking judges through the session. Everyone else at the judging table is merely called a judge. A judge is anyone whose scores count when evaluating the entries. Most are BJCP judges of various ranks or have at least taken the BJCP exam, but sometimes they can be other folks like a cicerone or a commercial brewer. The only other judge you may find at the table is what's referred to as a novice judge, which could be anyone who doesn't have much or any experience judging beer in competition, but they've been approved by the competition organizer. Now, the unsung heroes of the competition are the stewards. Stewards are the folks that really make the judging sessions flow smoothly and keep things on track as the day progresses. Usually there is one steward per flight, and they're there to help the judges. They keep the judging materials stocked, bring out the entries to the judges in the order specified by the head judge, double-check the score sheets and cover sheets to make sure they're properly filled out and the math is correct. They're busy folks who don't, in my opinion, get enough credit for what they do on judging day. Many judges will share samples as they evaluate entries to help educate the steward. Sometimes it's a case of, you need to try this Doppelbock, it's fantastic. Other times it's more like, have you ever tasted diacetyl in a beer? This one will really let you know what it tastes like. Stewards make the judges' lives easier and get to learn in the process. Pretty sweet deal if you ask me. This is a great first step to becoming a judge without jumping feet first into judging a comp. As a steward, you get a first-hand look behind the scenes of a competition and how it runs. Now, everyone on the staff at a competition has expectations, responsibilities, and conduct that they are expected to uphold. There are some rules that are specific to each position, and there are some that apply to just everyone participating on judging day. Let's take a look at these rules and how they relate to each position. As judges, we cannot judge a category we've entered a beer into. This should be pretty much a no-brainer, but I still want to point it out there. Me personally, I don't know that I could 100% tell you in a blind tasting if a sample was my beer, my buddy's beer, or a commercial example, but it just keeps things fair. Before the judging session starts, make sure to review the styles you'll be judging during the session. When discussing the entries with your judging partner or partners, be respectful and tactful in your comments, and don't try to influence another judge's opinion. Don't let your biased feelings about a style influence how you judge. You may not be the biggest fan of smoke beers, but you can still evaluate it and tell if it meets the style guidelines or not. Another thing judges are responsible for is maintaining the anonymity of each entry. If you're judging English beers and you're pretty sure that this dark mild is from one of the guys in your homebrew club, be as objective as you can. Evaluate it according to the guidelines and make a fair and impartial judging on it. And lastly, if you happen to notice another judge who's practicing, let's say, questionable behavior, you need to notify the judge director. Now, stewards are expected to carry out the duties we talked about earlier, and keeping in mind things like serving temperatures for various styles. The head judge at each table can ask for the flight list to be reordered to better suit the beers in the flight, as well as ask that some beers be set out to reach a serving temperature better suited for the style. Stewards are also asked to double-check all paperwork to make sure it's filled out fully and correctly, and point out any potential errors to the judges to have them corrected before handing in. Like I said earlier, judges may share samples with stewards, but a steward should never try to influence a judge's opinion after tasting that sample. Now, everyone on the competition staff is expected to take their role seriously. Realize that you've made a commitment to the competition organizer and that they're relying on you to help make the comp a success. If for some reason you can't make your appointed time, it's your responsibility to notify the competition organizer as soon as possible so they can find a replacement for you. Be on time. Early is better, of course, and it gives you a chance to settle in and get ready to do your part. Be mindful of the fact that we are tasting alcoholic beverages and don't get intoxicated while performing your duties. Make sure you keep drinking water in between samples to offset the alcohol as best you can. Just be aware that a lot of people are counting on you, so do your best to be your best on the days you're scheduled, because failing to do so could mean you don't get invited back for future competitions, and that would be a big bummer. On Facebook, one judge said this about our mindset as judges during a comp. Many times they are very somber and silent events, not very fun until the end when you have free time. Basically, it's work for those who haven't done it before. Another had a great response to this comment. I've been saying for years that judging beer is very different from drinking beer. Lots more work and a lot less beer. Okay, so it's judging day. You're all psyched up to go taste some great beers, hang out with your BJCP buddies, and have a great time doing it. But there are a few things to do to get prepared for the big day. First off, make sure you get plenty of rest the night before so you're fresh and ready to do your thing. I like to listen to a playlist on the drive to the comp to get me fired up and ready to go. Another good thing would be to listen to your favorite brewing podcast, to get in the mood. Maybe you need some smooth jazz and a meditation session. You do you, boo. Figure out what you need to get yourself mentally prepared and in the zone for the day. Since you're going to be tasting and smelling, you're going to want your senses to be at their best. Some things that can mess you up are spicy or greasy foods, so avoid those. And also, hot coffee can burn some of those precious taste buds. I like to get a nice iced coffee from my favorite coffee shop on the way to the comp to get my caffeine fix and save my palate. Avoid any strong-smelling personal care products, cologne, perfume, beard oils for my furry brethren out there, as well as lipstick or lip balm. These can really mess up your senses while evaluating beers. Trust me, this is not a beauty pageant. We just want to see your smiling face at the table, ready to be the best judge you can be. When you evaluate the samples, be mindful of the style you're judging. Some of the more delicate, less aggressive styles can be more difficult to pick out their specific qualities. Just because it's not a big, hoppy double IPA, don't let that skew your score. Always have a copy of the BJCP style guidelines handy to refer to as you judge, just to be sure you're evaluating the beer as it should be. Here's how a judging day goes down. Once the judging director has given the pre-judging instruction and you're at your table, the fun really begins. A calibration beer may be presented to all judges to help set the scoring among everyone. This will be a beer of the organizer's choosing, and everyone gets a sample of the same beer. They then get a few minutes to evaluate it and write down their scores. The sheets are handed in, and the scores are averaged. Then the judging director or competition organizer will tell all the judges what the average score was. Remember what your score was and adjust accordingly if you need to. This helps fine-tune the room, allowing judges that are maybe a bit more strict in their scoring to know that they need to be a little more lenient, while the participation trophy judges know to tighten up their scoring a tad. After the calibration beer, the actual judging begins. Each table will be responsible for a certain style or group of styles, and they evaluate those beers according to the BJCP score sheet and the organizer's directions. If you're unfamiliar with how the score sheet works, I have a video on that out, and I'll link it in the description below for you to check it out. As the beers are judged, some may be saved out for what's known as Mini Best of Show or Mini BOS. We'll get to that in a minute, so hang tight. The judges and their stewards work together to ensure each entry has its best shot at evaluation by minding serving temperatures and avoiding light and agitation as much as possible, as well as how they pour the beer into each sample cup. As each beer is judged, you and your judging partner will discuss your scores and observations to make sure your scores are aligned by a 5 to 7 point margin. As a new judge, don't be afraid to state your opinion to your partner. Your opinion counts just as much as theirs, and I have found most higher-ranking judges are open to any comments we newbies may have. In our Facebook conversation, a BJCP judge had this to say regarding new judges not being afraid to defend their scores. I think new judges should know their senses and opinions are as valuable as anyone else's at the table. If a senior judge is 7 or more points removed from their score, don't instantly fold to adjust your score to theirs. First, explain what you're sensing and why you deducted points, then listen to what your partner sensed and why they deducted points. Then negotiate your consensus score. In answer to that, another judge says we shouldn't take ownership of an entry during judging. Stay detached and listen. Don't push a beer forward and then die on the table for it. No one appreciates a table bully. If you have a solid point, make it, defend it, but be ready to let it go. Solid advice right there. Don't be a table bully. Just make sure the conversation is open and respectful on both sides. Also, on scoring, another judge said, don't be scared to score a beer highly if you found few or no deviations. Your temptation will be to score everything safely in the mid-30s. Be brave. Remember to keep your comments fair and constructive on your score sheets. Also, make sure to judge the beer as presented. In other words, judge the beer in the glass as declared by the entrant. That means if the beer is entered as an IPA and it's more of an amber ale, you gotta judge it as an IPA and score accordingly. If you have any questions about an entry, you can always ask the competition organizer for clarification on an entry's style or category, as well as any specialized ingredients that may have been declared but not on your flight sheet. Every once in a while, you come across a truly bad beer. Even the best brewers have had mishaps and unknowingly entered an infected beer into a comp. If you get a gusher or one that just smells terrible, you should make an effort to taste it. If you and your partner truly believe this beer is dangerous to drink, state it on the score sheet with as much feedback as possible to the entrant and leave the scores blank. Since most comps call for multiple bottles, it's best practice to call for the second bottle just to make sure that infection wasn't just an isolated incident. While judging, it's best not to consult with judges at another table. For one, someone you're talking to could be the one that brewed the beer you're discussing. Secondly, your scores should really be that, your scores. Now, if you and your partner just can't come to an agreement on scoring an entry, you can ask another judge at another table if they don't have an entry in the style you're judging. It really doesn't happen often though, so I wouldn't worry too much about this. I found that if my partner and I are off by more than 7 points, the usual compromise is the high score will come down a point or two and the low score will come up a bit. One of the BJCP judges I heard from on Facebook talked about something called queued judging. This can happen when a category is split between two tables due to a large number of entries. So let's say there are 25 entries in the English Strong Ale category. That's way too many for one judge pair to go through in a session. Remember, we want to keep flights around 12 entries. The competition organizer could just split them into two flights, one of 12 and one of 13, or they can do queued judging for that category. The beers are all in one flight, and as each judge team gets done with an entry, the next one on the list comes out. So Table A may go through 14 entries in the same time Table B gets the other 11 done. This can help speed things up if you have a pair that can really crank through the entries, and it helps keep things moving as smoothly as possible. Now, there was quite a bit of discussion on Facebook about scoring as well. There are really two methods for coming up with your scoring: top-down and bottom-up scoring. Top-down scoring means you give the entry its overall score first, then make the individual section scores add up to that. Bottom-down is just the opposite. Score each section, and then add them up to arrive at your final overall score. Now, one of the judges has the best method for scoring, in my opinion, and it's kind of a hybrid of both. She says this: I use the bottom left scoring guide as I score the 5 sections. 25 out of 50 is dead middle of good. So if aroma is good relative to style, the beer gets 5 to 7 points for aroma of 12 max. That's the equivalent of a 21 to 29 out of 50. If the aroma is very good, it gets an 8 to 9. I do this with each section as well as possible. And yes, annoying as it has been, I've given decimal scores in some sections. Nowhere have I been told I can only use integers. After adding my 5 scores, if I come up with a 30, I consider real carefully whether or not that entry is honestly very good instead of simply good. If not, I take a couple of points off to be 28 or 29. I know I've personally struggled with how to score, and I am going to try this method on my next judging session. As I said earlier, as each entry is evaluated, the judge pair can set aside entries for what is commonly called the mini best of show round. There was a ton of discussion and debate over the mini best of show by BJCP judges on Facebook. The mini BOS is a source of confusion for many homebrew competitors and judges alike. The short explanation is, this is the round that decides the first, second, and third place awards for each table or category, with top dog heading off to the best of show round. Each of those entries the judge pair set aside now get another look to see which one stands out in the crowd. Sometimes they are judged by the pair that selected them at the table, other times there is a separate judging group, usually higher ranking judges. Now, on Facebook, one judge had some pretty strong feelings about the term mini best of show. How some of us, not sure how many, but at least a small number in the Midwest, really loathe the term mini BOS. Something else would be better. It's confusing to entrants if the term is used on score sheets and it just isn't any kind of BOS. It's a best of table. That's what a few of us at Drunk Monk came up with a year or two ago as a preferable alternative. In St. Louis last month, I heard it referred to as the medal round, which I liked pretty well because that's exactly what it's doing, determining the medals. I think we new judges should start normalizing the term medal round. It really does, in my opinion, better describe what's happening. Another question I've had myself, and hear from even experienced competitors, is, my beer got a 43 but took second to a beer with a 38. How'd that happen? Well, in the medal round, the scores are no longer considered when the judges are evaluating the positions. It is, as one of my homebrew club buddies calls it, a beauty contest from here on out. Which one of these entries shines out over the others? Which one just has that it factor that wows the judges? Here's what the judges have to say about that. And as regards a first place winner chosen from Table 2 that had a 37 beating out the entry given second place from Table 3, even though that entry from Table 3 had a score of 40 or some such apparent discrepancy, that's exactly what the BOS or medal round is for. E.g., the best 2 beers from Ralph and Carla's table might be a 42 and a 41, and when compared with the best 2 from Mac and Mark's table, which were given a 38 and 40 by Mac and Mark, the BOT judges may very well find that one or both of the beers advanced by Mac and Mark are better examples of their respective styles than one or both of the beers advanced by Ralph and Carla, because Ralph and Carla are a bit more, fussy, since I have nothing better right now, about the points they award. Another judge had a very interesting point on this as well. It's that because of time constraints, the actual judging sheets only reflect the first round, in which novices, non-BJCP, etc. are filling out sheets, often while looking at style guidelines. BOT or BOS is a different bird, often done by senior BJCP judges and often purely sensory. It's the more critical judging step and usually done without any of the written feedback that could explain to the award winner or loser why their beer did or did not win an award. In the case of the 42 who didn't get a ribbon versus the 3 lower scoring beers that did, all they get is positives without any explanation of why they didn't place. I think this analogy from one of the judges sums up the medal round best. It's similar to the best of breed in a dog show. You have to be best working class before you can win BOS. I hope this helps clear things up, but if you want me to do a deep dive into the mini BOS, medal round versus BOS rounds of a comp, leave me a comment below and I'll get on it. So the initial round and medal round are done. It's time to separate the men from the boys, the wheat from the chaff, the wow from the holy shit. It's time for best of show round. Best of show determines the overall winner of the competition from all the entries. In some comps, this can mean beer, mead, and cider, and in some, each have their own BOS winner. It's all up to the competition organizer. Each first place winner from each of the contest categories are brought to the table for final judging. Now, some comps may set up a minimum score of 30 or higher to be considered for BOS, but it's not a hard and fast rule. None of the main round scores are used or shared on the BOS entries to not influence a decision either way. The judging panel is usually 3 to 5 judges, always an odd number to avoid a tie and not too many people to get a decision quicker. Judges are only told the style category and subcategory and maybe an entry number for each entry for the BOS round. They then sample each entry and make their own observations, then discuss amongst themselves how they felt about each entry. No other judges or stewards are allowed in the judging area at this time to keep anyone from influencing the judges' decisions. Now, there's 2 ways for judges to decide the top 3 spots in the comp. The method I've seen most often used is an elimination process. As the judges discuss the samples in the flight, they agree on eliminating beers one at a time until only 3 remain. Then they agree on the top 3 spots and announce the winner. The second method is just skip right to the top 3 beers and then announce the winners. Now, any higher-ranking BJCP judges out there, I'd love to hear more from you on this as far as the process and what you look for in those top-ranked entries. Leave me a comment and let's talk more about this. I'm really interested in it. After all the judging is done and winners are announced, the only thing left to do is clean up and go home. All the score sheets and unclaimed ribbons and medals and prizes are stored to be sent out later by the competition organizer. There's, of course, the general housekeeping and cleaning, putting away tables and chairs, throwing away the used sample cups, dumping dump buckets, etc. And then there's the matter of all those unused extra bottles from the entries. What to do with those? Well, if you're helping clean up, you may be offered some of these B bottles to take home for yourself. This is kind of a cool perk for helping with the comp, actually. But keep in mind this one thing. These are all the beers that didn't make the final judging table. So you may have some beers that have upper 30s scores, and you may have some low 20s too. I know this because I was gifted a case of B bottles from a comp I judged last summer. Lots of okay beer, but some of them, well, let's just say they can't all be winners, kid. Sometimes these extra bottles will be saved for some sort of homebrew club event, and when none of the options pan out, the bottles are dumped. I'm sure there is some sort of solemn ceremony, kind words are spoken, and maybe a few tears are shed. I can't confirm this, but I'd like to think that's how it gets done. I've had the opportunity to judge a handful of competitions so far, and I can say they are all a bit different, but still keep the main structure outlined in this video. Each comp has their own unique thing, whether it's the styles of beers allowed for entry, some even have themes, or how closely or strictly they hold to the BJCP guidelines or judging criteria. If you haven't judged yet, I strongly encourage you to take the leap and go for it. You can check out my video about my first judging experience that's linked in the description to get an understanding of what I went through, and I hope this video helps give you a better understanding about the process so it won't be so unfamiliar when you show up. If this did give you some better insight, why not give that like button a little tap? Stay judgy, my friend.